Yes, good afternoon. This is one of the two last workshops today. So this will, the conference has already ended formally with the closure of Patrick and the keynote of Philippe Cornelis. Welcome to this workshop on the U-space services. Sorry, my name is ENGELSTAD. I am the EASA U-space project leader. We have been working since a year now on the regulation, as you also were informed later on, earlier on. The technical workshop, this is how it will happen. It will be basically driven, not by me, but by a panel of experts who are sitting there eagerly waiting to come on stage. We have 5 experts with us. The objective here, I also have myself a few slides, introductory slides, which I will start with, but I would like first to present the panel members. I'm not sure I need to present Andy, because he has been spending his time in panels for the last 3 days. So Andy Lamprecht, he's a Chief Technology Officer at Airmap and responsible for research and development efforts. And I don't know how many times you have been on stage, but I think most of the people here should actually already seen your face.
Apologies, will be more diverse.
Okay. Then we have Mike GADD. Sorry, I have some pictures here. Representing Altitude Angel. He has 40 years of experience in aviation, with over 22 years in regulatory roles, both at EASA and at the UKCA. With Altitude Angel, he's focused on ensuring the safe integration of unmanned and automated aircraft into all classes of airspace to enable the societal, something that we have talked a lot these last days, and economic benefits of unmanned aerial system. Mateusz KOTLISKI from Poland. We are almost friends, so that's why I can call him by also his first name. Is the UTM project manager in PANSA. This is the Polish Air Navigation Service Agency, responsible for deployment of PANSA UTM. He has been working formerly as a senior specialist at the CAA Poland, where he was involved in the creation of the first Polish regulations concerning drone operation. And I understand that you are also an active glider and drone pilot. As I would say technical backup to Mateusz, I'm pleased to welcome Paweł. Paweł is from Drone Radar and supporting PANSA in all the technology development of UAS in Poland. So welcome, Paweł. It was a bit of a last minute, but thank you for being here. And then I don't know if I need to introduce Koen from the European Commission, DG Move, safety unit, and senior drone expert at the Commission. Koen was also the co-chair of the U-space expert group that have been elaborating and developing the U-space draft regulation all this year. So with all these brains, I'm talking about them, not about me. I hope that we will have a fruitful discussion. We want to make it lively, interactive. There will be 4 presentations. We will ensure that the 4 presentations do not exceed 15 minutes. So together. Yeah. So, but please, during the intervention, during the presentation, if you have any need And if you feel you would like to take the floor during the presentation, please do so. The first slide before this one was actually the one where you can also use the Slido in order to raise any questions that you have during this workshop. We do not have a lot of time. We need to stop at 5 because we all have trains that we cannot miss because these are, I understand, the last ones. Yes, and so maybe even some of you will also have to escape up a bit later. Yes, so the hashtag is stream A. So, as I said, objective of this workshop, again, we are not many here compared to the forum conference. I think we can make it very interactive. Let's share our views, our numerous ideas, our less numerous concerns, and I don't know if we have solutions today and way to resolve them, but let's try at least to have some good exchange on the U-space services. As I said, there are experts here on the panel. You are also experts. I think everybody here in this room can bring its own expertise to the discussion. Technical and operation solutions for services. This also, I don't know to what extent it's possible to discuss them in such a short time, but let's see. And then also in the overall context of the U-space regulation and the current drone regulation that are that have been published, we should have in the back of our mind also this overall harmonization and European approach that we want to give to the U-space and in general, but specifically also to U-space services. I'm not going into the details of this slide. This is just to recall a bit what are the drivers for the U-space services. You have all seen what is in the draft opinion. There are, I would say, not many services compared to all those that have been already proposed at different in different contexts. So safety, the mitigation, not only in the air but in the ground, harmonization, as I just said, and then also enable to have a harmonized approach when it comes to interoperability. What are the capabilities and the equipment that the drone would need to have in order to be provided with certain use-based services. This is what is currently in the draft opinion. So we have 3 mandatory services: e-identification, geo-awareness, and traffic information. I know that they are not in the sequence order because we have first flight authorization before traffic information, but we have other services as well that need to be complied with if they are, of course, provided, so they are not mandatory. I just want to show you here the outcome of the consultation, and I have highlighted this this tower here. You can see that on the 2,600 comments that we have received, actually we have 2 domains where we have more than 500 comments. And this is on the executive summary and the explanatory note on the far left, and on the 6 articles on the services. I'm showing you this graphic because what is important to note is that in the explanatory note, there are also comments on the services, because it is these are comments, of course, on the whole regulation. So I've put there 550 plus comments, but there are also comments there in the explanatory note. I think when we have so many comments, whether it is on service or other articles, it really shows that there is still room for improvement. Something might be wrong or misunderstood, but basically you see the other articles, there are quite a lot of comments also, but the services are really those that have triggered a lot of and even passionate comments. So this is the 7, more or less, it's a summary. I've put the 7 main comments that we receive. I would like to focus especially on the first one, because this is most of the comments that we have received also, what services should or should not be mandatory. This will also be further elaborated or provided with some ideas from the panel members. Many comments also suggested that it was not clear. We have traffic information, we have flight authorization, e-identification. There are some provisions there that where there are some duplication or misunderstanding. The tracking, you can find it in the traffic information. If we have tracking, if we have e-identification, do we need tracking? These are all questions that have been raised during the consultation, and not even during the consultation, but also during the expert group meetings. Industry standards also, we'll probably come to it somehow. Also many comments there on the validation of the standards. This afternoon, this was also raised, who is responsible for the strategic deconfliction in the panel 5 on the U.S. airspace integration. So that is also something that has triggered a lot of comments. The relation and the cohabitation with manned aircraft and what kind of services they would need to be provided with, if any. So this is also something which I think we will discuss quite extensively today. I've mentioned already the clarification that would need to be made in order to have a better, I would say, direction on exactly what are the requirements that we have, those that we have put in the draft opinion. What are really the requirements, and these requirements need to be clear. I admit that looking at them, there might be some issues there, and we are going to fix that. And then the link with the Implementing Act 945 with regard to the open category capabilities. Also, this is also a domain where there were quite a lot of comments. So this was all for me. I just want to bring you 2 questions. So I already mentioned the first one, the mandatory part of the services. Which one do you think should be regulated at this stage? You've heard Maria, she said, of course, the regulation is a first step to accommodate initial operations, to have regulation that is immediately implementable, and the maturity of the services. We hear here and there that the services are not mature. Some of them should not be even at all discussed or put in the regulation. So we would like to also discuss this with you. And then the statement that I would like to make is really we need to be clear in the requirements, in the description of the services, because this is, for me, the key aspect. If we want to, as Philippe Corneli said, have a market service for drone, it needs to be really clear and robust where we want to go with the U-space services. So this was all for me. I would like to start with with Mike, maybe. You have a few slides as well, so I give you the floor. Thank you very much.
We had the benefit, first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to support this afternoon. But we had the benefit of seeing those two questions a few days ago, so we had our first thoughts to put down in this presentation, which anybody from the UK might have seen most of this about 2 weeks ago, which for me, listening to the summing up earlier today, was very, very interesting that what I was thinking 2 weeks ago has been reflected almost to what I was thinking then. So I'm happy to say that I appear to be aligned with most of the thinking, which is nice. This slide really is just to show that we can all put fantastic video graphics together to show what we are talking about. But the reality is, where are we in the real world? But this is, for me, a very brief overview of what we are trying to achieve. And we have here all of the problems of critical national infrastructure, manned and unmanned, traffic and ground air risk. So yeah, that's just my little overview of what we hope the world will be like very soon. The second thing that Ken asked was sort of like just a quick overview of where are we today. This is really just in a few images the last 4.5, 5 years at Altitude Angel. So we can see on the left an image, a screenshot I took last night or a few days ago of this location in an app showing all of those hazard areas, that information that we provide to drone pilots today. And above that is exactly the same thing, but just shows you can do it in a web portal. In the top center is the fact that we're already starting to collect information about problems. A reporting system similar to the Just Culture system in manned aviation to learn what problems are, share our knowledge. Top there, on the top right, that's just showing with our friends at Frequentis and our friends at NATS, who are key partners to Altitude Angel, we can and have integrated flight plans and traffic tracking and conformance monitoring solutions into the ATM world. That's showing on that top right how it can be done using electronic smart strips. And the NATS image there is the authorization process in the UK with the National Air Traffic Services to authorize drone flights in controlled airspace. And the recent services we launched a few weeks ago, and these are live, you can find them, where we can track the drone, we can provide strategic deconfliction using flight plans, and tactical deconfliction during flight because we have tracking information. That is the state of the art today. So let's not make any mistakes that what we heard this morning of go do is being done. Whether the regulations are there or not, there's enough information if you know what the regulations are to know where the boundaries are and to do stuff. So I would advocate the industry is very proactive and is very much on the game of delivering these services, even if we don't yet have absolute certainty on the regulations. And it covers all of the different clients that we can think of. Okay? Whether it's an ANSP or an aviation authority who are looking for authorization processes or geofencing solutions to digitally, dynamically define those airspace zones, the tools are available. They can be used by airports. They can be used by all sorts of different entities within the ecosystems we've been talking about. So just reiterating here, the industry itself, the UTM service providers, this is Altitude Angel. I'm sure Andy and the other guys will say very much the same. We're doing this. So what I really wanted to come together on is what does it really mean next? What next? And for me, that's about the digitization process. This is manned aviation today. For those that aren't really aware, those numbers in those top boxes relate to the annexes of the Chicago Convention. We have international regulations that cover these things. But actually, they're all designed to be human-centric. They're all designed to be vertically quite separated. And there's actually quite a good reason for that, in my view. And that is, if I have a problem in air traffic control, the rest of the system can still carry on and the aircraft can still fly safely. Because they have that human-to-human piece that we can find alternate processes. It's quite resilient to problems. As we start getting into more digitized processes, and I mean by that, we can digitize something that scan a document and make it a PDF. It's digital. It's not very helpful until you start changing the procedures, the processes, and enable that digital information to be shared machine to machine. So when I see here for urban air mobility, yes, I can compare urban air mobility vehicles to helicopters. The step change is those urban air mobility vehicles demand and rely upon digitally exchanged information. So it starts that digital aviation process, not just making PDFs, but making machine-usable, machine-to-machine communications. And that's why I now refer to things as unified traffic management, because we're sharing the same airspace. We're not making any more airspace, just the same as we're not making any more land. So it's a finite resource we have to share. So we have to find ways of sharing everything. And that means whether we call it cooperation, whether we call it integration, whatever, we are sharing a finite resource using the same tool sets and cooperative methodologies, and they are all underpinned by automation and data exchange because of the volumes and the speed of things and how they work. So when I just sum up, this is my final slide. For me, and it was said earlier this morning, if we're all consumers, we all act as a consumer. And when we buy an air ticket, we don't actually decide to go on a particular route because it's a particular manufacturer of aircraft. We sort of decide how much is the cost and where do I want to go first. So it's not so much about the technology. We have a basic expectation. The magic happens in the background. We get what we want as basically as a service. So the focus on services is absolutely right for me because as a consumer, that's what I want. I don't need to know about magic of how it works. I just want it to work. And perhaps something we've not heard much so far, for me, we're not just talking about aviation. We've had a conference here that's been very aviation-centric. But if we don't get this right, our competition are other forms of transport. If we are not competitive to autonomous cars, why would I take a short-haul flight? Whether it's an urban air mobility or a manned aircraft. As a consumer, where I want to be, when, how fast, how much does it cost, is going to be in my thinking. So we have to start looking out the window a bit more and recognizing that some of our competitors are not within the aviation domain. So with that, I think that is a thank you from me.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for this. We are just a bit late. So, Mateusz, please.
Thank you, Ken. I'll try to be quick. Mike said that it's not all about aviation, but let me controversially start with aviation, because I would like to make a little riddle and a question to you, because this is the Cirrus Vision. This is the aircraft which has been designed in 1 year, but this is the question for you. What time did it take to certify this aircraft? Do you know? Or could you make a guess? Still ongoing? No, it's finished, but it took 9 years. So 1 year to design and to make a maiden flight, 9 years to certify. So starting with that, I would like to share you some inputs about certification of our UTM in Poland and U-space services we are engaging. So to make a general overview, what's the current level of implementation in Poland. I would say it's U3 using a generic image from the U-space blueprint. But we're moving forward to U4 to the automation. So what we're doing in Poland, we're focusing on building an interface between drone operator and ATC, because we think it's crucial to digitize the coordination between drone operators and ATC, which we already have for many years. And the way of certification is the PANSA UTM, which was developed with the help with our technological partners, Drone Radar and Hoki. And it's under certification at the moment with CAF Poland, and is scheduled for the operational use in the first half of 2020. So what is all about, this interface? This is the bridge between drone operators and the air traffic control. And this bridge in the system, on the technical level, is being done with the use of the mobile app, most recognized in Poland at the moment, Drone Radar, and it's fully integrated with the PANSA UTM and helps to bridge those two worlds, drone operators who are not aviators, and the fully, a little bit hermetic world of ATC. So what is this ATS workplace about? This display for ATC, which will be put in operationally use in our towers. It consists a few functions. There are flight strips, which are the way the information is presented to the controller, which they understand. So it also have built-in two-way non-verbal communication between the operator and the controller with the mobile app. Also, traffic visualization is a must to engage future automatic operations. So we have HEMS real-time tracking from the HEMS helicopters, and also we can see the ADS-B transponders also on board the UAVs. The system has a dynamic geofencing tool, which informs the operator if there is a dynamically created geofence zone. And also, what's the crucial here, it consists flexible use of airspace, which represents the actual aeronautical situation. And we think, from NSP point of view, it's a must to have in UTM. So this process, I would not go into detail, because this is this bridge I told you about. If you see the bridge from the distance, it seems very simple, but it's actually a little bit of engineering behind it. So this is the same situation. There's the process which makes the request from the operator, this request is checked on the airspace level, the risk assessment, and then the pre-authorization is being made and converted to this flight strip you saw at the ATC working position. But I would like to say a little bit about the maturity of the U-space services. The maturity of the U-space services should be only assessed on the practical use of the drone operations, because there is like aging of U-space services, I would call it, because if there are new applications of drones operations, new applications of drones, the U-space service which is being said is mature now, it won't be mature any longer. So what is advanced today will be not efficient tomorrow. We need to understand that. That's why we need flexibility. Flexibility from the regulatory perspective, flexibility in the implementation process. So we need to implement and go with the learning curve and try to evolve with the market. So the solution for that is the flexible regulatory, but also process-driven UTM, ready to adapt for new application and regulations. And a little bit more about the regulatory approach. As being said, regulators' role is to create a flexible environment because from our certification process, we need this flexibility. We see it. And U-space regulation is a very good approach. The U-space should be unified, but also there are few things which should be maintained. So reliability of airspace, structured data presented to the U-space, the drone operators or other users of U-space. So this is the crucial one. And then talking about the mandatory U-space services which should be regulated by the U-space regulation, there are three fundamental services: registration, e-identification, and geofencing. So next question to you: what future brings? And the answer is simple: no one knows, but we can try to be ready for this future. Implement the basic functionalities, these fundamental tools, and evolve with that. And be ready for the innovation and be open-minded. See what's happening in the market, see what's happening in the projects, CESAR projects. There are a few examples of Polish-related projects, Central European Drone Demonstrator, also 5G drones is very promising in 5G infrastructure, but we need to look what's being done and try to implement it. So thank you very much, and here we go.
Thank you, Mateusz. I'm sorry to be rude and quick. I don't know, we have Koen in the panel here. Koen is eager to also maybe explain the Commission's view, if you have any. Koen needs to leave in 10 minutes, I think. If you have any questions or any comments with regard to the Commission's approach on the services, which are more or less the same as the one of EASA, or I don't know if Koen, you would like to make a statement or provide a few ideas on the Commission side on the services.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here for the Die Hard. Sorry that I have to leave in 10 minutes. I promised my family to be back at home at 8 o'clock this evening. Everybody knows the process, and we have put in on black on white an idea which will become a regulation, meaning it will be European law which applies to all of us, to all operators, policemen, enforcement. So it must be clear which exact obligations there are by providing that service. And that's a little bit our problem. To which extent do we have to introduce into the text the list of services, knowing that these will evolve and the standards will evolve and so on. So the trick that we would like to use is to play with, we will express it in terms of in performance-based terms. And then the second thing is, to which extent do we have to be exhaustive for safety reasons? And can we leave it open and to everybody that there might be other services provided, but then on a purely market basis? That must also be clear to everybody. This is the context in which we have to work. This is a first pre-draft. We will get the process through the process and receive the formal opinion of EASA, and then starts the process with the member states. So we still have a little bit time to think, to reflect, and to get it more or less right. And where we would like to take it then, during the lunch break, we had here during the conference a good participation also from the FAA and so on. We want to make sure that eventually we produce a regulatory framework which is global, where you have convergence between the different continents, so that an operator, a drone operator, and a U-space service provider can work in the same regulatory environment. That's a little bit the thinking, so we don't have to come up with the final decision, the final say, but this is a process that we are just starting. Thank you.
Thank you, Koen. Quickly, we have 20 minutes. Andy, yes. No, you don't have 20 minutes. You have 2 minutes.
I have to do the double.
Yes.
There we go. All right, thank you, Ken. You'll see I have a more, less of a story, less of a vision, more technical details. So happy to provide a bit of a contrast to everybody else. By the way, if you want those slides to be emailed to you, then let me know. Here's my email address. You don't need to take the pictures. I tried to align the slides on basically what the services are that are in the draft regulation. This is an implementation that Airmap did and that is now being tested in the country of Switzerland of the centralized function or CIF or Common Information Function. In Switzerland it's called FIMS. I'm sure we converge on the name. That should be the least of all problems. It consists of 4 individual components. One, and I start at the bottom, one is called geography. That is for distributing geographical information. So where are the runways? How high can you fly? What are the restriction zones? What are the NOTAMs and the flight restrictions? It's it's like an FTP server more or less. You can put data there and then USPs can grab it from there. What is a bit special is that we designed the FTP server in a way, and you can see it at the far right, that it can be used by, in the end, operators who access it through their service provider, but it can also be used by competent authorities. So if you're a city and you want to put restrictions in the U-space system, because your local law allows you to do that, then this is the digital way of doing that. Then the blue system tracking, that's really for making available the government paid for surveillance data that typically the ANSP has. So who's in the air and where are they going? Surveillance data that it has in the end is used in the traffic awareness function, and it can be distributed like that. Then we have something called Operations Federator, and I would really encourage to always think about that when you hear about a flight restriction, because any restriction zone often, or in almost all cases, warrants some process where you now want to be able to access this airspace anyway, because maybe you are the police, or you are the firefighter, or you are someone who just happens to have the correct authorization to fly in that airspace. So that's what that module does. It doesn't actually authorize the flights, but it knows where it needs to go. Because again, there might be one operator, but there might be 5 different restriction zones, one from the ANSP, one from the city, one from the police, and maybe one from a firefighting operation. And so you probably need to coordinate with 5 different authorities, and that's what this thing does. It's like a switch. It fans out the authorization requests to the appropriate authorities. And then finally, there's a service registry and a trust store, because there's many different players that are connected to that. They all need digital identities, and they need to be authenticated so that I know, yes, this is the policeman, yes, this is the service provider with the correct EASA level of certification, and so on. And you can see with these little arrows, even though we don't have appropriate aviation standards for most of those things currently, we do have standards. There are existing products either from other industries. It really doesn't take a lot of creativity to adopt this and to come up with an agreement on it. It's not something where we have to reinvent the wheel. It's just something where we need to take something that exists in the e-commerce world, for instance. So far about the centralized functions. And you can see our approach is more or less, the centralized function is an enabler. It's a data distribution tool. It doesn't really do any of the more sophisticated functions, because that happens here in the U-space services world. And again, someone made this point earlier in the conference. You can see on the left are kind of how we as Airmap currently think about services, and they somehow overlap with the EASA draft, but not really. Of course, once the standards are out and the regulations are out, we'll all converge on the same meaning. but those are still enabling functions, because in the end, what services the consumer wants to use are the things on the right. And those are a combination of multiple services that are relevant around safety, but then also around value add and convenience factors. So it's really from the value chain, where the money is being made, it's towards the right. And so that's what we call the demand side. And on the left is the supply side, which basically we need to figure out how to let those things fly in the airspace. But that doesn't necessarily produce the value per se. One thing that just needs some highlight, and I say this in every session I get to say it, this slide I stole from, guess who, the FAA. It's the latest statistics on the land system, which corresponds roughly to the Flight Authorization Service. I think this is soft. We can just take it. It's there. It's active since 2 years. It's at over 581 airports. There have been around 200,000 authorizations this year in the US. You can see it's 18,900 per month. You can see how many of them are produced in an automated fashion and how many of those are produced in a way where a human actually has to do something. So that's only 14% of all of those. And it's great progress, and there's really no real reason why this doesn't happen across Europe. So I would call out for anyone who thinks about how to authorize drones around airports to strongly look into that system. And all the information is on the FAA's website, including the legal documents and the statistics and how to do this in a federated way, because you see in the middle, there's actually 14, and I hear since 2 days ago, there's actually 20 different private industry partners who are actually carrying out those authorization tasks. It's not the FAA. And in case you were wondering, also the FAA doesn't pay any one of those 14 industry participants anything. So it's actually quite cost effective for the government. I'll skip this for the sake of time, Ken. We actually commented back on some of the services that were put in the EASA draft opinion, and I kind of summarized the text here. We did this also as GUTMA, the Global ATM Association, and consolidated many of the member feedbacks in terms of how services are also likely to be implemented from a technical perspective. And so here's just some summary information. I mean, traffic awareness and traffic information in our view is a bit tricky, because providing that as a means of safety for mitigating risk requires way more requirements and a higher level of robustness. So that's a bit really tricky. On e-identification and tracking, we strongly encourage to use the almost existing ASTM International Industry Standard, because that's really solid and has been tested in a number of places. Weather service, we actually don't think it needs to be regulated right now, because there's no real reason to use it in a mandatory way in the open category. And if you use it in a specific category, you have to get approval on an individual basis anyway. So we can probably put this aside for a way. And then conformance monitoring is easy to implement, I would say, but it's not easy to decide what to do with the information afterwards. And clearly one need to make the operator aware if the system detects that there's a problem. But I somehow have this feeling that a lot of times we talk about how do we now integrate this in ATM and how do we make it visible on an ATCO controller screen. And I would really question why. Like, what does the air traffic controller now do if there is a non-conforming drone? I mean, he can try to clear the sky to move everything out of the way. Is it really the right means? How effective is that? What other means can be done? There's, I think, a lot of research missing on the procedure side in terms of what to actually do in cases of non-conformance. So the safe thing, and to me the only thing to do, is to alert the operator. Something's wrong, get down. But that's really it. So that concludes my short and hopefully effective statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. I just want to come back to the last one, to the conformance monitoring. so that you know, it was not initially in the draft opinion. It came quite late. From our perspective, we think that this is one of the services that should be mandatory. We have not put it mandatory as such in the draft opinion. But again, these are all provisions that are still open. The requirements, the descriptions of the service, as I said, need still, I think, quite huge improvement. And I mean, to be honest, it was so difficult, you know, to have this discussion, mandatory, not mandatory, how do we describe them, how do everybody understand the same services. And actually then what we did, we also, not only in the group of experts, but also we had also some bilaterals. We asked for some input remotely from certain ANSPs, from certain U-space service providers, drone operators, and then we basically picked a bit some elements where we thought this would basically be a very first step in order to describe the services. But again, I think this is one, and you've seen the chart there with the 500 comments where the services should be improved. I understand that we have received a couple of questions. No, I'm not ready for U-space.
Don't have it run on Windows.
Okay, good. So I'm discovering this with you. The first one I saw was the one in green from Nicola. Nicola was in the expert group. Maybe I would like to, because Andy just finished his presentation. I see the last question there for you. It's a question to you on the FTP or SFTP.
Yeah, it's not FTP. I was joking, but it functions like FTP. So it's a service. It's an IT service where you connect to an API, and then you can actually use a bunch of different mechanisms to get also notified when a new data file is available. There's an audit mechanism available for the authority to make sure that all the subscribers have updated their data sets on their side. So it functions like a web service. FTP is the layman's term of how to describe it.
Thank you, Andy. I take the opportunity that Powell is also here to take the one that is addressed to PANSA. Does PANSA UTM provide geo-awareness to drone operators? Or was not that one you wanted to take?
I wanted to take the one with the 5G, the first
take
one.
Any question you want.
And the geo-awareness I will leave to
okay.
Mateusz. So actually, the 5G is becoming really, really interesting stuff, especially that we are considering the role of the virtual operator of the UTM provider. So it might happen that the UTM also become one day either the virtual provider of the telecommunication network, either they will provision the service for instance, special service like 112, like disaster recovery. So the UTM will have power to reconfigure the telecommunication network just to, for instance, to offer special services for drones, helping with the floods, in the disaster recovery, and so on and so on. So this is extremely interesting thing, and we should also watch out this. But for us today, we treat 5G as another transmission layer, physical layer for communication. It could be great if we could have simply the C2 link guaranteed in the airspace. This is the first thing, but we also considering, for instance, guaranteed bandwidth for the FPV, first person view from the drone. And then we can really think about, the VFR flights. That, with the virtual reality, with the 8K transmission, with the 5G, that could be, we could really put the pilot, virtual pilot on the airplane. So there are many, many possibilities with the 5G that we should consider.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. I give the floor to Mateusz on the other one, on the geo-awareness for drone operators.
So the question was does PANSA provide geo-awareness? Yes, basically yes. I would split it in two, actually, because there is a function for the air traffic controller to make an ad hoc geo-awareness area, which will be visible through the app to all drone operators. And if there are drone operators in the area, they will be notified to land. And they need to confirm this procedure of landing when it's done. So this is the this ad hoc geo-awareness. What about geographical zones? They will be also put into the airspace structure in the system, and the system also provides 3 U-space related areas. We call it that because it's not in the regulation, but it functions as a information to drone operators on related events which might happen. So we call it dry, drop, and RAR. So the last one, last letter is restriction, information, prohibited. So it's pretty similar as in legacy aviation, I would say, but it serves its purpose. Okay.
Thank you, Mateusz. We have 5 minutes. I think we can take the 2 last questions that are there. Maybe to Andy first on the where the data comes.
Where does the
from
data in the
FIMS?
FIMS come from? Yeah, so that really depends on the country and situation it is deployed in. Ideally, it comes from the authority who are the original owner, creator, and maintainer of the data. In the case of Switzerland, there is basically 2 data sources. One is the SkyGuide AIP, so that's everything around aviation, and SkyGuide makes sure that whenever they update something, it is also published out and distributed. Then there's also these nature protective areas that are related to drone flight restrictions that are from a different government agency. But and they are also connected to this FIMS system. So, but it could also be that someone takes over the mandate from the other authority to manage this on their behalf. In the end, it's an end-to-end system. So whoever is the authoritative owner should be connected, so that in the end we have the situation that it's clear what is the definitive and regulatory data that everybody needs to comply with.
Thank you, Andy. I'm coming back to you, Pavel. I just want to, so I mentioned the question from Nicola. I want to ask you a question on your question. What do you think? What should be the level of requirements between the USSP and the ANSP in terms of traffic information?
Well, this is really an open question. There's no maliciousness behind that.
That's why I'm asking to you.
Yes, because you will welcome the same airspace. You will welcome manned aircraft, unmanned aircraft. And you're here to ensure safety of manned aircraft, safety of unmanned aircraft, preventing collision and so on. There's this service named Traffic Information. You provide these services for unmanned aircraft as well as for manned aircraft. But for the USSP, for the time being, you have a 15 pages regulation. As for the ANSP, for traffic information, you have several hundreds of pages of operational and technical requirements. Same airspace, different treatment, but same level of safety. So I ask you the question.
So I asked the panel the question. If you have any,
So this
it's an open question. So
let me put the comment, because I asked the same question today on the EASA panel, and it has the highest rank in the question system, but it has been deleted. So it means something. So my question was about how EASA will treat non-certified transponders in the buffered area where we consider manned and unmanned aviation. So this is approximately the same question. So we can imagine, you know, very cheap ADS-B transponders, FLARM, OGN. We can LTE. We can via the real-time transmission, real-time databases. We can push this back via Asterix to the system. We can do everything. but there is no certification. And why the guy from the airplane, manned aircraft should pay, you know, $10,000 for a transponder, and the person on the drone can pay, you know, 200 euro for this, and they will still communicate. Where is the balance? So this question has been deleted also. But I don't know, maybe it was a mistake. Sorry, I'm not blaming anyone.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, we are transparent. Okay. Okay, no, thank you for this also. On the map, I think it comes from you, Andrew. If this is considered as being a use-based services, maybe I would like to ask this either to Mike or to Andy again. What do you think about this question?
I think this leads to actually delve down into quite a number of issues. So one of that first question is what service should be mandated? If I start there, because we're all talking about performance-based regulations, and for me, the first thing with performance-based regulations is what is your objective you're trying to solve? Because then you can decide what performance you need. So when I look at this as what do I think are the mandatory aspects, the first thing is we're talking about deconfliction. So all of the services associated to separation and deconfliction are the top level safety ones. So they're obviously going to be in the mandatory category. And then as you drill down, you say, well, what underpins the provision of that capability? And then you start to do the risk-based assessment of how critical is it? Does it need to be mandated? Can it be done in an open service and achieve the same objectives? So I don't think I can answer the question other than at this point in time, there's a lot of map data out there. Some of it is a clear source of reference, as Andy said. You go to the current state provider for aeronautical information, and you have a degree of assurance both of the quality of the data and how current it is in terms of timeliness. And so you have confidence in that and what that means. But then as you go down further and further away from that trusted information, you have lower degrees of confidence. You can still use it, but you increase your margins, your buffers, your area to cope with lower degrees of confidence. And that's a risk-based approach. So I think we're going to have to be quite skillful in how we finesse all of this information to be appropriate to the objective we're trying to use it for. It's a bit of a roundabout way, I think, but it's not a black and white answer. Not at the moment.
Thank you, Mike. Andy, do you have an opinion on that one?
It's just that luckily and thankfully, because of the EASA regulation that was put in place this year, becoming effective next year, we should no longer be in the situation where member states publish restrictions and then it's impossible for the drone users to actually know where those restrictions are. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Powell, yes?
We were talking about the mapping. I mean, we can put very nice maps to the systems, but we need to have possibility to say what those maps means for those people who are not in the aviation world. Yeah, for instance, if you say to someone who is not aviation what Class C of the airspace means, I would bet that nobody will know, actually. So we should translate to the language of the children. Let's say, okay, I'm not saying that it should be infantile, but it should be really something that we will clearly explain what exactly it means. And this is the overlayer part of what we should do also.
And there, by the way, sharing of learnings would be highly appreciated. We've been working together a lot with the SkyGuide Ops department, and I believe you have done in Poland. And that is actually one of the questions you can spend days and days on. Like, should the advisory text in the app for consumers now exactly be the text in the law, or should it be something that children can understand?
I can reply to you immediately.
I'm sure we have the same opinion.
But the lawyers will say something else.
Yes.
Yeah, but fully agree.
Okay. It's 5:03. I think I'm sorry for this. We need to close this as Andy said, if you would like to have his presentation at least, you can ask for him or ask us. Yes, it will be, yes. And I would like to thank you for coming. I know that we haven't been into a more technical discussion because of the time. But anyway, I think we had a first glimpse of what would be what are the opinions on certain services, where we didn't go very in details. But I was not expecting that, to be honest, to have more clarity on which really use-based services could be mandated, what are the other ones that should be provided. We will still work on it. As I said, the requirements need to be revised. Also, this approach of the mandatory services also, we will work on this with the Commission until beginning of March, when we are going to adopt, issue the opinion for adoption. And until then, I think we will not make a round of consultation, but we will still try to consult remotely the industry. We need to have this right, because this is crucial in the overall. The services are really crucial for the overall functioning of the use-based services. So I'm sorry you didn't have the chance to ask verbally your questions, but I think the panel members have responded to those that were provided through Slido. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the panelists. And have a safe trip back home. Thank you.